Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire supported by Glenlivet Books. My guest today is arguably India's best-known author and certainly the most widely read in the English language. He's written 9 novels, 5 of them have become films, and his latest is just out. And here it is. It's called One Arranged Murder. But I'm not going to talk to him about his novels today. Instead, I've chosen to talk to him about his columns. Arguably, they haven't got the attention they deserve and certainly not the admiration they merit. And if you haven't guessed who my guest is, it's only the one and only Chetan Bhagat. Chetan, let me start with your most recent article, which appeared in the Times of India just 6 days ago, and it was about the hard right. You write, they are noisy and unruly. They want permanent conflict, frequent bashing of Muslims, and frankly, things that truly harm India's growth prospects. Do you see the hard right as something that threatens India's interests?
I will get right to it, but firstly, thank you for having me. I'm very excited because it's my first live interview post-pandemic. So it's really nice to be here. And thanks for paying attention to the columns, because I think that's what it's all about for me. I mean, while it's always nice to write bestsellers and fun, entertaining books, I think that's where I feel I could make a difference. And yes, the hard right column is basically is a very peculiar dilemma. I think almost the government is also in, that I think once you keep winning, the government has been winning. I mean, it's a government. It is well understood that it easily wins elections, whatever reason, lack of opposition, they have the pulse right. They keep winning. Then what does it become about? It becomes about legacy. It's about what did you do when you win? You know, how will people remember you? It's like a good cricket player. It's after a while, it's legacy. A good actor, it's about legacy, body of work. And I think the current government would like to have a legacy that they took India to the next level in terms of economic growth, in terms of clout in the world, all those wonderful things that come essentially with economic growth.
And the hard right is threatening that.
And hard right. So, but the current government is supported by a moderate right. It is the right-wing government, a big moderate right, and a smaller but fairly substantial hard right. Every party has that. A left party will have a hard left. And they are the most amazing supporters of the BJP and of the Modi government. But I think their energy is directed toward things that are counterproductive to like India's economic growth. For example, like a Tanishq ad. Okay, it's a very small example, but it's substantial because it was just a YouTube ad. Firstly, I'm not even sure it was being telecast, and it was about a sweet ad about a Muslim family welcoming a Hindu girl. I mean, okay, it's no big deal. If nobody had told me there's a controversy, I wouldn't even have raised half an eyebrow over it. But it trended for days because the hard right wanted the ad withdrawn. It was withdrawn. Tanishq issued a statement. You know, and what does it create? It creates a certain uncertain unease in the business environment, and so that's not good for India.
So when you say that the hard right want permanent conflict, frequent bashing of Muslims, and frankly things that truly harm India's growth prospects, you're actually saying the hard right threatens India's interests.
To me, you see, I consider myself a nationalist too, but to me, my nationalism is very simple. I want India to be rich. I want India to be rich, which means I want me to be rich, I want you to be rich, and I want every Indian to be richer than where they were.
And the hard right is stopping that happening.
I think the hard right also claims to be super nationalists, but they are not probably connecting the dots that because for them the vision of India is let's go back to a certain society where it was the golden era of India, which I'm not even sure was really there historically.
So the consequence of what they stand for imperils India's interest, it imperils growth, it imperils harmony.
Yes, because they want a dominant community, they want a certain value system in society, and I think that can't be created. India is multicultural, you can't wish that away. India has 15 crore Muslims, you can't wish that away. You have to find a way to progress with our multicultural diversity. I'm not saying you...
And the hard right is not doing that.
I think the hard right is directionless with a lot of passion and energy, and the government finds it difficult to control them because they are their supporters, they are the base.
So I am right. I am therefore right when I say, in your eyes, the hard right threatens the most important thing you believe India has to do, which is to grow, become rich, and to make poor Indians prosperous. The hard right threatens that.
Yes. They do, and I give that example. They are like that uncle in a marriage which gets drunk and starts misbehaving and comes near the groom and bride and starts saying crazy things and takes attention away from a beautiful pious ceremony. But you can't throw him out because he's paid for the wedding or part of the wedding, and so therefore the government can't tell the hard right, stop this, what are you doing? I'm sure the finance minister did not like that the Economist, instead of announcing that how her economic package for COVID recovery won in May, in October, in November, they are highlighting how certain right wing elements bullied a jewelry brand. I'm sure she doesn't want this, but she can't really openly say it. Amit Shah did say it later on that there was an overreaction. So I think that is also a signal that the government inside wants to keep this in check without coming across as attacking its own base.
I'll come to the relationship between the government and the hard right in a moment's time, but let me take up one more thing directly to do with the hard right.
Absolutely.
If there's one thing the hard right wants more than anything else, it's the creation of a Hindu Rashtra. Now, in a column that you wrote on the 1st of March, you say attempts to create a Hindu Rashtra will destroy investment, business sentiment and harmony. And your conclusion was a prosperous Hindu Rashtra is an impossibility. So clearly you don't believe that becoming a Hindu Rashtra guarantees India a glorious future. If anything, it ensures the future will be deep, depressing and negative.
Yeah, see, having a rich, there are two points I want to mention is this. Firstly, having a rich history, no matter how rich and what, I'm not denying that the Hindu civilization was, or the past civilization of India which was predominantly Hindu, was a great civilization. But Africa is the cradle of humanity. I mean, it's the cradle of all civilization. But that doesn't mean Africa is respected in the world as much as Europe and US is today, simply because they're not rich enough. So you need to be rich, and that's what builds the glory and clout. If you have money in your pocket, the world looks at you with respect. Second point, just one minor
and you're saying going back to ancient India, recreating ancient India will ensure that divisions happen, you don't become rich, investment doesn't happen, that prosperous future doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, how do you go about doing it? What's your execution of that? What do you do with the, like in a country where the language changes and the culture changes every 100 kilometers, how do you actually execute that? And in the process of executing that, are you going to destroy whatever is already there? See, Karan, I want to fix India, but I think where the left wing, including the publication where this was going to go on, get it wrong is they appeal to people's morality. Be good people, don't hurt a minority. Firstly, that's separate discussion, but it doesn't generally work. What you need to do is appeal to people's self-interest. You have to appeal to the hard right self-interest. You want a great job or not? You want your son to get a good job or not? You want to progress or not? You want to make India progress, so get along with everybody.
So you're saying
that's a better pitch than saying be good.
So you're saying hearkening back to India's ancient glories means that you are turning your back on science, on modern thinking, and therefore prosperity and growth.
I think the execution of it, how do you do it? Like, I mean, how do you, are you planning a state which is run by Hindu scriptures? Are you planning, what are Muslims? And what are Christians and what are Jain, Sikhs? And
these are impossible things to achieve.
It's too much. It's not like we have 50,000 Muslims like Parsis are only 50,000 now. It's like we can't even envision it. It's not how India was designed. Pakistan was designed like that.
India is not designed to be a Hindu Rashtra.
No, when we made the independence, clearly the father of the nation, who's printed on every note of ours, he said that India is the place where everybody will stay. That's how we were able to stitch all the princely kingdoms together, even though they were different. That federal
But it
structure.
sounds very much as if you're saying that secularism has to be the concept that unites different people, different castes, different creeds. Becoming a Hindu Rashtra will threaten and create divisions between people.
Yeah, but what is secularism is up for debate in the world today, right? Even the Wire has a certain view on secularism. I have a certain view on secularism. France has a very different view on secularism today, right? So what is that? That way, I feel
The Indian view is that all religions are equal, not separation of state and religion, but all religions are equal. All religions have a right to equally flourish. That's the Indian view.
Is it?
What's your view?
I mean, I feel you don't necessarily I mean, there are some people who believe secularism.
No, what's your view?
My view is to let everybody live peacefully. My view is more pluralism, which is basically everybody has the right to.
Isn't that very close to all religions are equal? They can all function.
Yeah, it's all close by, right? But does it mean that now
and the Hindu Rashtra threatens this, because the Hindu Rashtra converts it into a Hindu first society.
See, even a Hindu Rashtra and even secularism is very broad definition. I mean, in some ways, should we have a Hindu? For example, if you ask me, Karan,
I'm simply quoting you. It
No,
will
I'll give you
destroy investment, business sentiment and harmony.
the aggression. If you do it, see, certain things. Let's say if there is a Hindu anywhere in the world who doesn't have a place to live and they are being prosecuted because of their religion.
I'll come to CA in a moment's time.
No, I'm not coming to CA. But if you ask me, I would say, yeah, India should give them a place. Now, that doesn't make us a Hindu Rashtra, I feel.
Hang on, would you only give a place to a Hindu who doesn't have somewhere to live?
We'll get
would
to
you
that
give
discussion.
it to Muslims, Christians, Jains, Parsis, Sikhs?
How do you give it to Muslims if they are being prosecuted in a Muslim country? Tell me this. How
By
do you
inviting them to yours.
So, are you saying if in Saudi Arabia there is some Shia Sunni fight, those people can come to India and
The
we'll give them?
truth of the
No,
matter
I mean,
is
it's
there's not a single Arab wanting to come to India. That's a
No,
theoretical
but
construct.
what I'm saying-
However, there are Ahmadiyas in Pakistan who might be willing to come. They were Indians before they
So
became
that's a broader.
Pakistani.
I think it becomes a very fine discussion, and then we have all these Islamic countries who will not
Just
like
stick
this,
to
where
Pakistan.
blasphemy.
Stick to Pakistan and Bangladesh. They were part of India before 47. If a Pakistani Ahmadiyya is being persecuted in his country, does he have as much of a right as a Hindu in Pakistan to come to India to find shelter in what was the original motherland?
See, we are not trying to create justice in Pakistan.
No, I'm not answering. I'm not talking about justice in Pakistan. Does he have an equal right with a Hindu Pakistani to come here?
I don't know. I feel first we got to cut the, you got to solve the big problem first. If there is a estranged Hindu somewhere in this world and they are, which is the natural home for a
this
Hindu
is very
person.
interesting. You give priority to Hindus to come to India before you permit people of other religions. Does that include Sikhs? This
No.
is, after all, the motherland
So
of Sikhs and
if you
Jains.
ask me my view, let's get to what is the view. I feel a persecuted Hindu should be allowed to come. Secondly, we should have an asylum policy which is religion agnostic. You should be still able to come and seek asylum in India, which is not even maybe based on religion. It could be based on political persecution. It could be based on freedom of speech. We need a asylum policy. Right?
We've collapsed
But
into
we've
this.
kind of moved
We've collapsed
somewhere.
into this because we were talking about Hindu Rashtra. Let's come back to Hindu Rashtra. You define in that article that you wrote for the Times of India 6 days ago the Hindu agenda, the Hindu right agenda, as showing Muslims.
Not Hindu right, the hard right. See, Karan,
Okay.
it's very, there
Hard
are
right.
millions.
I'll use the word hard right.
Yeah,
You
so the
define
hard right, because there are because when you say it's the right agenda, it's like saying the Muslims want this. No, certain radical
Mr.
Muslims
Bhagat,
want this.
I'll happily correct myself and
Okay,
call it the
good.
hard right agenda.
Uh-huh.
Not Hindu right, hard right. You define in that article the hard right agenda as showing Muslims as bad, you use that word, and the cause of our problems. You also say they promote a rigid, regressive, conservative Hindu moral code of the past. And you say that this ends up dominating the headlines, and a net result is that it manages to destroy the legacy of the government. Is this why you believe the government should take steps to check the hard right?
Absolutely. I mean, is it worth it that a pub is raided in Bangalore for Valentine's Day and that comes in The Economist and the New York Times or whatever? I agree, those international publications aren't the ultimate in deciding what is India.
But it gives India a bad
But
name.
if it's coming in the Financial Times and some investor is flipping the pages and he's seeing that in a Bangalore pub, which looks like the pub I go to in London, some hooligans are coming and stopping dating and things like that, it needs to, it doesn't create a good feeling.
And it puts investors off.
Of course. And I say this as an ex-investment banker. I'm not just saying this like that. I worked in Hong Kong. We used to look at all Asian countries, and political risks, social risks were a part of the equation. And on balance, sometimes we would say, you know what, it's just better to just go into Philippines because they don't have this uncertainty. So it's a very, like writing.
I take a point. You go on in that article to say this: any party in power has the responsibility to check its extreme elements.
Yeah, including the left wing.
Quite
Let me tell you very
clearly,
clearly, I don't like the hard right,
but
and I don't like the hard
But
left.
the left wing is not an extreme element of the Modi government. the hard right is an extreme element.
Yes.
Now, the Modi government is doing nothing to check them. So, is this a
They are
mistake?
I'll tell you what they are doing.
I was going to ask you, is this a mistake not to check them more effectively?
So, I think the approach has been, which is quite evidenced by some of the actions that I can see. I am not got the inside track on it. The approach is to not comment and therefore hope the news goes away, because
But
if
that's
they,
not happening.
If they comment, we will come to that. If they comment, then it blows up further. However, in the case of the Tanishq, it was interesting to see that the Home Minister comment that there was far too much overreaction, which he didn't have to
did it 2 weeks later.
Yeah, but he did. That means
But the ad had been withdrawn. The criticism in the West had happened. The Economist had written the article.
Yes.
So he should have spoken up earlier.
I don't know if he had spoken earlier, it would have become national headlines.
No, but just a moment. I'm quoting you. Any party in power has the responsibility to check its extreme elements, but that responsibility is not being exercised.
But I'm telling you, it's like that drunk uncle who's paid for the wedding, and how do you tackle it? See, you have to step.
How many drunk uncles does the Modi government have?
There is a hard right, but see, the problem, Karan, with sites like the Wire, where this is going, is it's easy to criticize, but you have to step into their shoes. You think they don't want? They don't want to.
Aren't you making excuses for them?
No, I'm not making excuses. I feel I'm more responsible in giving my comments. If I think, what would I have done if I was in their shoes? Okay, and do you think I wouldn't have liked to be the fastest growing economy in the world with me at the helm? Of course I would. Would I not? But the people who are vehement fans of mine, the people who have literally, when there's an election, they work the hardest to get me elected. Now they are doing something which I feel is long term damaging my economy. How do I keep them in check? And it doesn't have an easy answer.
So you're suggesting that the Modi government is caught in a bind. On the one hand, the hard right does a lot to ensure the election of the BJP and the Modi government, and therefore there's a sense of gratitude. On the other hand, many of the things the hard right stands for, demands and talks about, damages the image of the country and damages investment prospects. Yet, because they are grateful to them for their help in getting elected, they can't take action to stop the damage.
A political party is only there to serve the people who elected them. Now, so therefore,
even at the cost of the damage they're doing to the legacy of the government?
We are assuming that, and as a writer, I don't agree with this. We are assuming that people can't be changed. My job as a writer is to change the mindset of the country.
But 7 years have passed, Mr. Bhagat, and the hard right is getting more vociferous, their voice is getting louder, the damage they're doing to India's image is growing. You just pointed out how The Economist, on 3 separate occasions, chose to focus on the hard right and the trouble they're creating rather than what Nirmala Sitharaman is doing.
Yeah, because it's more sensational, right? It's obviously more interesting.
In which case, shouldn't Mr. Modi be checking them now rather than tolerating them?
Well, that's why I wrote the article. I mean,
So you agree with me then?
I agree. Of course, I agree, and I am doing my bit by trying to tell Indians, appealing to the hard right self-interest. Guys, if you want to define your nationalism, say, I'm going to make India rich, I'm going to make Indian cities look like the big Chinese cities. Just Google Chinese cities,
But you're doing something else. You're not just speaking to the hard right in that article, you're also speaking to the Modi government and saying, in your own interest,
I think they can
stop this.
I think they can, I agree, but at the same time, I don't want to come across as a foolish person who doesn't understand the concept of political base. And at the same, so the solution, I think, is if the government redefines hard nationalism, which is get rich.
Okay.
I mean, they what is it, not get to Harappa civilization, get rich, get richer than China by 20 whatever. So that can be done, and that's still in the positive space. That's not offending the hard right, and that still solves the problem. My problem is not to be to shame the government or shame the right wing, which the portal I'm going to be.
No, far from shaming the government, the impression you're giving me is you're reluctant to be critical of the government.
No, any government, if it was the Congress government also, if it was their extreme wing also, the point is we have to, Karan, we have to take India ahead. It's enough. How does it matter?
Let's leave this discussion about the hard right. There are other things that you've written about that I want to pick up on.
Okay.
Some of your most, I think,
isn't your show called Hard Talk or something?
No, some of your most insightful columns have been about 2 subjects that are closely connected in the public eye. One, the National Register of Citizens, The second, the Citizenship Amendment Act. Let's take up the NRC first. In January, you said of the NRC, the government should officially withdraw it or put it in long-term cold storage.
And they did.
Well, I'm not sure they've actually withdrawn it or even put it in cold storage.
I mean, it's gone now.
COVID overtook them, but they're still committed to it. In fact, by the way, the Home Minister, in that interview that you're quoting where he said that there was an overreaction to the ad, also committed himself to both of these.
But
so that's why do you believe it should be put in long-term cold storage? Why do you believe it should be withdrawn? Explain that to me.
yeah, so the NRC requires a lot of documentation to prove, and I think if there is a good digitization program in the country, an NRC can actually help. In many countries it's there, like a social security number in the US, it can actually help target government schemes better. It's literally, it's not a bad exercise, but in India what's going to end up happening is either people won't have the documents, or people will easily fake the documents, or people will be harassed for the documents, or the rich will have it and the poor won't. The kind of execution errors that will happen, pure execution, because in theory, yeah, some countries have it, it's good. It will make the exercise, it will corrupt the data itself, and it will not be a worthwhile
So for practical reasons, it should be withdrawn.
And people will feel a lot of harassment.
In other words, it's an impractical thing for India today.
And let's say even if you do it and say 5% of the population comes out, they are not able to prove they are. Now 5% of India is 6 crore or 7 crore people, right? What do you do with them, right? And we haven't, so I think if we start today that every birth that happens has to be registered.
Can I interrupt? You're saying two very important things. One, you're saying it's impractical today because we simply cannot handle it in execution terms. And the second thing you're saying is that if you end up with 5% unable to prove they're citizens, which is 6 crore people, 60 million, what do you do with them?
It's like the size of UK.
And you can't literally send them to Bangladesh because Bangladesh won't take them.
Nobody will take them.
Nobody will take them. So you'll have ended up with an even worse problem because you'll have identified 60 million who don't have citizenship, and yet you can't do anything about it.
Yes. So
it's both impractical and also the end result will create a bigger problem.
Yeah. CAA is different.
I'll come to CAA in a moment's time. But when you were writing about the NRC, you made a very interesting comment, observation about infiltrators. Now, infiltrators are people the Home Minister calls termites. But this is what you wrote. All this is done under the assumption that a percentage of the Indian population comprises infiltrators who are a drain on national resources. And then you add...
That is the assumption, right?
But then you add, this assumption may not be true as even infiltrators contribute to GDP. Now, by the way, you're actually right. You're totally right. But you're also completely contradicting the Home Minister's position.
I mean, there are certain people who could be a drain on resources, but let's say somebody who's so-called came over from somewhere and sets up a bakery and hires 10 people, they have contributed to the GDP. I mean, it's a factual thing, it's not an opinion.
I'll tell you why I say your comment contradicts completely the Home Minister's position. Termites don't contribute. Termites eat up and destroy. He calls them termites. But you say, and I'm quoting you again, infiltrators contribute to GDP. If they contribute to GDP, they're not termites.
So there could be firstly, nobody should be called a termite. I think human beings should not be called termites.
You think that was a mistake?
I think that was very strong language and that should not have been used. Okay, but leave that apart, and politicians say a lot of things to appeal to certain audiences, and I don't know the context also on what sense he's saying it. I don't know. And I'm not.
But it shouldn't have been said.
I mean, I'm not here to give critiques on individual politicians, individual lines. As a broader level, I just wanted to let people know that not just because someone is an illegal immigrant, economically, they may still be contributing. That's a fact. I mean, that you can ask any economist. Whether you don't want them because they're not Indian, that's a separate discussion. But to say that they're all infiltrators and therefore they're all a drain on your national resources but they don't contribute to GDP is not correct. So I think the public should know.
This is why I think your point and observation is fascinating, because you make it as someone who's generally a supporter of this government, and yet you're being honest enough to point out the language was wrong, it shouldn't have been used, but you're also pointing out The belief that they don't contribute economically is wrong. They do.
I mean, I am a supporter of India, and whatever helps my country is, I don't have a stake in any political party or anything. But at the same time, I think if I can, it's a different approach.
Okay.
You know,
Let me come to something else. As I said, NRC is closely connected with the Citizenship Amendment Act. You've written about that as well. You wrote about that on the 21st of December when I believe the protest.
You do amazing research, by the way.
The protest at that stage when you wrote were almost at their high point.
Yes.
This is what you said. The CAA needs better timing, much better wording, a long period of public consultations to build consensus, and frankly, better intentions. What do you mean by better intentions?
I mean, see, there are ways to do things, and I think you could have the same policy, but if a policy affects a lot of people, certain consensus building doesn't hurt, right? Now, there are certain merits of doing things a certain way where you say, decision done, it's done. And I do see the value in that because India has a tendency to endlessly discuss in committees and
but here you think
but I
better
feel
intentions.
in this one, yeah, I think in this one a little more consensus, and you know how you put it out there, put a trial balloon, let it get discussed, let it get ripe, and have a few amendments maybe from other parties.
There's a hint in that article of yours, 21st December last year, which seems to explain what you mean by better intentions. You say in your article, CAA happened after the abrogation of Article 370. It happened after the Supreme Court had passed its judgment on the Babri Masjid Ram Janmabhoomi issue. And then you write, I'm quoting you, was it really necessary to shove another one down Muslim throats? Is that the deal the BJP has with its base? Every week is Insult a Muslim Week.
Exactly, and I think that's what the hard right likes and enjoys. And you're talking.
But that's what you say was a mistake. You're clearly suggesting it.
Yeah, and that was 1 year ago. And if you notice, the government this year, of course, COVID has taken over everything, so has been focused on COVID control and now on economic recovery, which I like. But last year, that was not the focus.
But come back.
I mean, they were getting a lot of applause for Article 370, and of course, the Ayodhya judgment also people liked. And then the CA, it felt like too much going in the line of the social agenda of the BJP, and that too much appeasement of the hard right. There can be appeasement of the hard right.
In fact,
too.
you phrased it slightly differently. In your article, you didn't phrase it as appeasement of hard right. You phrased it as another shoved down the throat of the Muslims. Your words were, was it really necessary to shove another one down Muslim throats? Every week, Insult a Muslim Week.
Yeah, because that's how that community feels. That's how Muslims sometimes
feel. Do you, Chetan Bhagat, see the CAA as something that is prejudiced against Muslims? Or at least not fair to Muslims?
CAA plus NRC could end up being prejudiced against Muslims, because if I am a Hindu and the NRC excludes me, the CAA allows me right back in. But because it's almost like a life jacket. If I'm excluded from the plane, everybody jumps, and if you don't have a parachute,
but safety net does not exist for Muslims.
Yes, and it is a structural issue, and therefore I do feel in that way it could have been better worded. And what do you do? Like I said,
and this is what you meant. It should have had better intentions.
Yeah, and like I said, what will we do if we have 6% or 8% or 10% of people who are excluded, which is 10 crore people?
It serves no purpose to identify them as illegal, because you can't do anything.
And then you'll have 10 crore people, and then out of that, by the demographics of India, 6-7 crore maybe Hindu. Okay, they will say, okay, apply under CAA, fine, you're in. And then we're talking of something a year ago.
Can I at this point widen the discussion a little? The BJP is committed to Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas. But is the BJP really treating Muslims equally and fairly? And I'll tell you why I ask. Because there's no shortage of BJP MLAs, MPs, even ministers. Sometimes ministers in Mr. Modi's government who say hateful things about Muslims. Hence my question, does the BJP treat Muslims equally and fairly, or does it see them as a second category lower than Hindus?
Do Indians treat Muslims fairly? Do 80% of Indians or 85% of Indians who are not Muslims view Muslims as equal.
You accept and admit that there is Hindu-Muslim prejudice in India?
There, you have to put it in context. There are reasons for it. There was a time when I mean, it was just yesterday, right? The anniversary of the 26/11 attacks. I remember I was staying in near Kolaba at that time, and the two hotels are
But
like.
that was done by Pakistanis.
I
Is
know.
there prejudice in India
I'm
against
telling-
Indian Muslims? Because you're suggesting it. You came very close when you asked, do 80% of Hindus treat Muslims fairly? You're suggesting Hindus have Muslim prejudice.
There is definitely there is, I don't know, prejudice, but there is definitely
Dislike?
I don't know, but there is definitely a feeling of them as the other. In if you talk pan India,
The majority of Hindus think of Muslims as the other.
and they feel like certain historical wrong. I'm just telling you how they feel. I'm not. It's not necessarily what I feel, but you have to. You know, I think what the left wing does not do is they do not listen to the logic in the head of an average Hindu, thinking that they are silly people, they are deplorables or whatever. There is a logic. There has been a lot of Muslim appeasement in the past for Muslim vote banks. There have been huge acts of terrorism that were going on all over the country. We have lived, when I was a child, that's how we've grown up. There was apprehension, and I'm not saying the entire Muslim community is at fault.
You're saying there may
but
be. You're saying there may be a lot of reasons why.
There are a lot of
but Hindus are prejudiced against
yeah,
Muslims.
so there are reasons. It's like, because if you just randomly ask me, are Hindus 80% Hindus prejudiced? Well, the prejudice has come with a context, and that has not been addressed. Certain issues have not been addressed.
I accept the point you make. You're saying that there is a context, there is a background, but you're also accepting that as a result of that context and background, 80% of Hindus are prejudiced against Muslims. You're accepting that.
I mean, the fact is that the Muslims have voted as a vote bank for a very long time. They still do, and now there is a certain number of Hindu community which has put their own government, and they want the certain issues to be done.
So then you are accepting my question, because my question was, does the BJP treat Muslims equally and fairly, and you're accepting it doesn't?
No, it's just trying to. I feel there are certain Hindu items on the agenda which are important to Hindus, and they needed to be addressed, and as long as they don't harm Muslims, there is nothing wrong in doing that.
Let me ask you this. Do you believe young Muslims are involved in what's called love jihad, and therefore we need tough rules to protect Hindus?
Love jihad is one of those, I don't know, urban myths, or firstly, the numbers of inter-community marriages are minuscule, okay. Secondly, it also assumes that a woman is not a able adult making her own choices. You know, if there is a oppression, if there is a certain under oppression a marriage happens, then you can even talk of those terms. But it in general, and I also see that people say it's okay if it's a Hindu boy and a Muslim girl, which kind of mixes bigotry and patriarchy all together, and it's so bizarre to think. So I think it's not, that's the whole Tanishq ad, right? So that is not something I support. That is a very hard right view, and that's where it gets into the territory where I feel it harms my country.
I want to pick out two bits of your answer because I think they're important. You began by saying love jihad is an urban myth, and you ended by saying that is not something I support.
No.
In other words, you're saying to me love jihad is concocted rubbish.
That's the way you put it.
No, I'm asking if you agree.
No, it could be a genuine fear, you know, Karan. It's not everybody is like concocting. People may actually.
No, but is it happening?
I'm telling you, the statistics show that it's not happening. But people have fears. They are not like concocting fear. Sometimes you just have a fear.
A lot of fears are not just unrealistic, but a reflection of prejudice.
Yeah,
but the important
there is prejudice.
thing, but important thing, what you said, statistics show it's not happening.
Indians are prejudiced north to south, east to west, Hindu to Muslim, Dalit to non-Dalit. We are like that.
But the important thing is what you said. Statistics show it's not happening. Love jihad is not happening.
I mean, there could be cases where there is always cases where a Hindu girl is kidnapped or something. Those apart, but those are not. That's not a trend. Those
are minuscule.
Yeah, and it could happen.
Let me quote to you what the Minister of State for Home, Mr. Reddy, said in Parliament in February 10 months ago. The intelligence agencies have not found even one instance
Yeah.
Not even one instance of love jihad. That's the Modi government's Minister of State for Home in Parliament. Not one instance.
Yes. Now, but allow me 30 seconds to see, because I think what is getting hard today for people is the left wingers don't want to listen to the right wing point of view, right wingers don't want. Allow me to explain why the fear is there. In a Hindu religion, there may be resistance when you want to marry a girl who's Muslim or a boy who's Muslim, and there could be a lot of drama at home, but finally the marriage happens and you get to keep your religion. In the Muslim religion, generally, culturally, they will say same drama, same nonsense, and then in the end they say, okay, you can marry, but you have to convert. That conversion culture is not there in Hindus. Okay, it's not there, and you cannot take that away.
Don't forget Ghar Wapsi, which is reconversion.
Come on, that is another.
It's conversion.
But it's not really.
And remember, most people
You're talking of something which is a very
most
isolated.
People who convert
in
out
general,
of Hinduism,
no, but
take the Dalits for example, and earlier take those who became Muslim, did it because they were rejected by the caste system that infiltrates our religion.
I'm not saying Hinduism.
They're driven out.
I'm not saying Hinduism is perfect, but it is my religion, and I love it.
Mine too, by the way.
Yes, and you have to accept that it is a little more tolerant when it comes to things like conversion. Christians are actually, it's almost like marketing, that you're told that if you want to be a great Christian, make somebody else Christian. Why shouldn't you talk about, you are a very hard talking kind of journalist and you are talking, so let's talk about it. Why this is where the left wing doesn't want to listen to any other side.
I am not talking
and then
on
they
behalf
say we are
of the left wing. I'm talking on behalf of an audience that want to understand your views. And
I'm trying to tell you where this is coming from. That okay, nobody is saying don't marry. Nobody has passed a law saying that you can't marry outside religion. There is still, you can marry under the Special Marriage Act.
No, just a moment.
You have to see.
UP and Madhya Pradesh are in the process. UP is already promulgated an ordinance. Madhya Pradesh will be doing.
Have they said you cannot marry? Have they said you cannot marry outside your religion?
You have to get permission to change your religion for purposes of marriage 2 months in advance. Why? In a free country, I can change my religion when I want, as often as I want, for any reason that I want. Why should the government have to be given 2 months notice?
Because why? Generally, Karan, people don't want to change their religion. Generally, people don't
but
randomly.
If people do want to change their religion, they have a right.
I'm just saying, if a girl is normally getting married to a guy who's from another religion, she will just want to marry that guy and keep her religion. There is a Special Marriage Act. You can marry under that. Typically, you cannot deny that there is pressure from the Muslim side in a Hindu-Muslim marriage. That's their culture, and I'm not saying it's good or bad.
Aren't you contradicting yourself? A moment ago, you said statistically.
I'm saying you shouldn't call it love jihad.
Love jihad doesn't happen. You said that. I'm quoting your words.
Love jihad is a horrible term. I mean, love jihad is a horrible term. I don't like that term. But at the same time, whenever there is something, Karan, there is always a kernel of truth somewhere. You have to understand where is the concern.
This is what I'm saying. You're contradicting yourself. A moment ago, you said statistically love jihad doesn't happen. No. Now you're saying there's a kernel of truth.
No, the kernel of truth, because you said, I'll tell you, you said, is it concocted? I said, no, it's a genuine fear. And then I'm trying to explain the fear, which you're not letting me finish.
But fears don't have to be real. Fears
no, it is coming from something real, that a Muslim family generally, culturally will say, you can, firstly, we won't let you marry outside the religion, but if you are, that person has to convert. That's not cool.
How do we know Muslim families say this? You're claiming it. How do you
know?
No,
it is true.
How do you know?
Because their religion says.
Tell me, how do you know?
Because in their religion, it is said
where?
that
where
culturally, I'm not saying it's, I'm not an expert on religious
Then let's
scripture.
keep out of the subject, because actually what we are doing is reflecting prejudice.
No, because the Muslim, if you want to do a Muslim nikah, both the people have to be Muslim. That's how it works.
If you want to do a Hindu ceremony, you have to be Hindu. If you want to do a Catholic one, you have to be Catholic.
Hindus are a lot more flexible. Muslims are.
I'm not making.
Listen, Karan.
Okay.
It's not my view. If you ask me, I am not interested in anyone's religion. Anybody can marry anybody. I'm okay with any kind of marriage. I'm okay with gay marriage also. I'm okay with anything. But I'm telling you the beliefs that exist in India, and if you don't listen to them, if you don't nudge people to change, if you say you're just bad people, then liberals will keep isolating themselves in tiny bubbles and tiny websites, and you know.
Okay, what you're saying is
And
that we
I'm
need
sure
to be,
I'm waiting for the comment on this interview saying, why we called this guy? I am cancelling my
I
subscription.
called this guy because he happens to be perhaps the most widely read author in the country
doesn't
writing
matter
in English.
if
And secondly,
many of the
I
viewers
called
today-
this guy because some of the things he's written in his column surprised me, pleased me. I wanted to know more about them. It's not the image I had of Chetan Bhagat. Let me come to a second issue that arises out of your columns, which I think for many will be fascinating. You write about what you call India's obsession with Pakistan. You did it on the 13th of October last year.
It's horrible.
You
I
write,
hate it.
I'm going to quote you. This obsession with Pakistan, you say, is harming us. For our own growth's sake, we must stop comparing and feeling good about being better than Pakistan on a daily basis. Explain to me, why is it harming us?
Again, as a nationalist, I feel I love my country so much that I want to aim higher. I want to be like the countries that have done the best, like, and let's say even a China is a $10,000 GDP and we are at 2,000. Okay, I want to compare myself to China every week, not culturally, but in economic performance.
Why is it wrong and harming to compare yourself to Pakistan?
Because they're hardly a benchmark. Who will benchmark to Pakistan? Who you want to benchmark to? It's like, take any measure. It is one of the, I don't know.
Can I quote what
no
you
offense
said?
to Pakistanis, but, and they are wonderful people and they have wonderful food and they are very warm and loving. But as a country and as an economy and as a political system and as a regressive kind of laws and come on, India
Can I
and
quote,
Pakistan, what is the even
can
comparison?
I quote what you wrote?
Yes,
Because I
please.
think it sums up your thoughts beautifully. You say, when we compare ourselves to them, we also equate ourselves to them. And if we consider Pakistan an equal, aren't we only insulting ourselves?
Yes, exactly. It's not like I like Pakistan or whatever. If you say you're a nationalist and who's your benchmark? Pakistan. We are better than them. We defeated them. Oh, you know.
So you're saying the obsession with Pakistan is an insult to yourself?
Yeah. I am saying, yes, all this, Karan, is coming from a broader, if you can call, I don't know if it's an ideology or it's my thinking, is we need to redefine our nationalism. Please be nationalistic. Please be. And please maintain some of your Hindu
But
issues.
don't be obsessed with Pakistan.
Yeah, please love your religion. Please, you know, you can have 2 or 3 issues you want to solve, but make sure India progresses.
You say something else about the obsession with Pakistan that I found particularly eye-opening. You say hating Pakistan is an acceptable surrogate for hating Muslims.
Yeah, it's, and a lot of people get confused. A lot of people get confused between the two.
But you're also saying that those who cannot upfront say they don't like Muslims because it's considered wrong to say it, instead talk about Pakistan.
Yeah, and then some people feel Muslims in India have sympathy with Pakistan, and you know, a lot of, it's not true.
Is anti-Muslim feeling rising in India?
It's not rising. It's just out in the open, and it's become acceptable to wear it. It's not rising. I don't think it was less 10 years ago.
But it's become acceptable to wear it.
It's become more acceptable to wear.
In other words, these people don't hide in the closet now, they say it up front.
Yeah, but it's not like in 1990 people used to love Muslims more, or like, it's not true. It's just that social media and of course the victory, right? I mean, there is a certain Hindu vote consolidation.
But this important change that it's now out in the open and it's become acceptable to wear it, has that happened since the BJP came to power in 2014? Is it a consequence of that?
I think it's mixed. It's also a lot to do with the empowerment that social media accounts give an average Indian, which just
social media has given people the right to say things
Yeah,
that
all over
otherwise
the-
they wouldn't have said.
Yeah, and found similar thinking people and finding you know, comfort in crowds. It's happened all over the world. It's not just in India.
That I suspect is probably a very credibly correct explanation. Social media has given people the capacity, the courage, the conviction to say things that otherwise they couldn't say, they wouldn't say. Now they find others like them and they say it.
Yeah, and currency, I don't think the government, and I'm not defending the government, I don't think the government or even most Indians or most Hindus in India want to live hating Muslims. I'm not even saying they should not be forced to intermingle. If people don't want to intermingle, it's fine. I feel it'll be great if they do, but okay, if they don't, there is a difference between peace and love. You don't have to love Muslims,
But
you
be
can live
peaceful.
in peace. Be peaceful. You have to create an environment where, you know, work can flourish, creativity flourishes, innovation, business, everything flourishes. So that's all I'm aiming for. Just have peace You know, I am not of the view that everybody must hug each other. If you do, it's great, good on you, man. But I'm talking pan-India level.
Let me come, because we're coming to the end of this interview, to one more issue that you've written about. And you did it pretty recently on the 8th of November. You have some very thought-provoking criticisms to make about liberals. You say they failed to express themselves in a way India understands. They have not made the intellectual effort to reach and convince Indians.
Yes.
Is it just their tone and language that is a problem, or is their thinking now also something Indians don't respond to? Is it both?
Language, I mean, I write in English and a little bit in Hindi, I speak in English and Hindi. So, I don't think it's the language itself, maybe a little bit of the tone, maybe a little bit of the attitude of we are smarter than you and we are nobler than you and we are more, these days what they call, we are more woke than you. I think nobody likes that. I honestly would rather sit and explain over 1 hour to the hard right how they can make India better than sit with these annoying liberals for 1 hour, because I find they just don't listen. They say because they are very convinced that what they know. Also, I'll give you, forget about BJP, Congress and these issues. I'll give you another example. For example, feminism, right? Completely unconnected to what we've been discussing. In the US, feminism may be not enough women CEOs. Okay. In India, knowing my country, in a city like Indore, feminism may be housewife saying, we will not cook on Sunday, we should go out and eat, I don't want to be in the kitchen on Sunday. Now, if you are sometimes what I find Indian liberals, they will copy paste New York templates, they will say feminism is this, and if I make a case, let us say I write a column on women should not cook on Sunday, they will say he thinks being a this is feminism, this is what is this nonsense, regressive nonsense. But that means a lot to the women in Indore. Who decides what is feminism? The women of this country or the elites of this country?
You're saying
so what I'm saying is that's the disconnect.
You're saying the ideas that liberals have in India, as well as sometimes the manner of expressing them, doesn't resonate with the Indian people.
I think they are intellectually not as superior and in fact bereft of basic application of situation-wise analysis. For example, they think Hindus and Muslims are a bit like white and black of the US. It's not. It's very clear that the blacks were brought in as slaves, they were oppressed throughout. There was never a period in history where the blacks were in power, whereas India is quite the opposite. I mean, there were hundreds of years of Muslim rule. There was never a case of the kind of radicalism that is there.
And you're suggesting that Indian liberals have not thought through the
because
Indian situation.
The average Hindu also feels oppressed.
So you're saying Indian liberals don't understand India, they impose Western concepts on India,
yes,
which don't work in our country.
Yes, and dominant Hindus do not have, Hindus also feel oppressed and Muslims also feel oppressed, and we have to sit and talk. But
this is what you mean when you say they do not express themselves in a way India understands.
Yes, neither do they understand India, neither do liberals understand India, neither can they express.
Nor are they understood by Indians.
No, and they have become a very echo chamber minority.
In this context, you say of the Congress party,
and even for me, and they're very patronizing, even for me, you'll see like when we see on Twitter and all this, say, oh, even Chetan Bhagat is making sense now. Oh really? Who are you to decide? Can you be more, even Chetan Bhagat is making sense now. That means you have the right to issue certificates on who is the sensible. I'm not, I mean, do you even know what you're talking about? If someone makes sense, they make sense. What is the need? You know, and if I write something which they agree with, then they'll kind of reluctantly. And I feel like that's not the point. It's not about me, or it's about the ideas we need to make this country ahead.
In this context, you say of the Congress party, and I'm quoting you, the Congress was, is and will be the only real opposition to the BJP. But the truth is today, it is a weak and ineffective opposition in several Indian states. Tamil Nadu, Bengal, increasingly UP, Bihar, it's actually non-existent. How can Congress, and this is my question, how can Congress reinvigorate itself and become a real challenge to the BJP?
Yeah, and I would say this, because the liberals are already in a minority, and if there is one laser sharp magnifying glass focus they need to do, it is not sit and criticize Amit Shah and Modi all day, it is to focus on the Congress.
But how? How do you build up this party?
How did the BJP have a resurgence? Okay, it's out there. You have the question paper and the answer. How did the BJP come back? The rise of a popular leader and they gave him the platform, and a new leader came and he changed it. Now
So Congress has to find its equivalent of Narendra
they have
Modi.
to reinvent, they have to, it's not, they have to change with the times. Now you say no, Congress is not built that way, this is only built by a family. Well, I mean, that's not how things work. If
You're also saying, although you haven't said it, that the Gandhis now have to be done away with. Congress must break free, find a new popular elected leader who can take them to the same position Modi has taken the BJP.
Yes, but at the same time, there are two ways the Gandhis can leave. One is somebody does a mutiny and pushes them away, which I don't think will be as effective as because the Gandhis still have some clout, as them anointing or abdicating and kind of backing someone.
Anointing, so they leave a chosen successor. That's not an elected person.
No, but okay, anointing is the wrong word. Blessing the new choice, because
But the choice comes from an election.
yes, but the Gandhis stay because they do have some equity. I mean, it's not like it's diminishing, but if it doesn't have to be
So
antagonist.
Congress needs to elect.
Like the BJP. I'm sure the old guard of the BJP wasn't very happy when there was a new guard of the BJP that came.
Mr. Advani stayed away from Goa where Mr. Modi was formally selected.
He didn't start like sulking, or he didn't say
He came very close to sulking, but let's not get into that.
Okay, but it was managed well. And they are still there. There is something called the Margdarshak Mandal, and they were
No longer. It was there during the first Modi government.
but
It's no longer there now.
And when he came to the first day of, listen, these are optics.
But let's come back to
these
Congress.
Are optics,
let's
but
come
it
back
matters.
to Congress.
So
You're saying Congress needs to elect a leader. That leader needs to be blessed by the Gandhis,
Yes.
right? But that leader therefore should be free thereafter to create the party as he thinks fit.
that is step one. We live in a very visual, digitally connected times, and people find it hard to kind of emotionally connect to an organization, but they can emotionally connect to a person. And I think
And therefore it's critical the right person is elected, who has the character, the temperament and the capacity to appeal to a billion people.
you don't need a billion, you just need 30%. You know what I mean?
I understand.
You don't need.
My last
And they
question.
already have 18%. Actually, if you look at the issue, they already get 18-20% vote share.
They need 11, 12 more.
11, 12 more. Even that, when those are my old columns, but the logic of getting Prime Minister Modi at that time, before he became super popular, was to just swing vote share for BJP 5%. You just have to swing the incremental. You don't need a superstar. You just need someone who will have some pulling power.
Okay. My last question. What is your assessment of Narendra Modi as Prime Minister? In May, he will have been Prime Minister for 7 years, which is long enough for you to have formed an opinion.
I mean, he definitely is well intentioned, and I think now I have to look at what the last 6 months, the focus on the economy and managing COVID has been quite good. Given Indian reality, we could have had mayhem. Given what's happening in the United States.
Is India under Mr. Modi a more divided country?
No, I don't think so, because the people of India are still the same. No.
Muslims, as you agreed a moment ago, do feel more persecuted?
They do, because they are, yes, I don't know, persecuted, but there is a little more fearful.
Has the economy done well under Mr. Modi?
Well, last year has been bad because of COVID.
What about before that?
Not as well. That's the only issue. If you ask me what is my value add, what is my take, is that we have for some reason not been able to get the economic thing going as the economic
Is that the Modi government's fault?
They could have done better. They should do better. I mean.
So your minus point for the Modi government is the handling of the economy.
But now, I feel now there is a focus. For example, we have opened up. Even despite COVID, we have found a way to function. The flights are running, the trains are running. We could have been very draconian still.
Flights are only running between countries that accepted a bubble. In fact, this morning's papers
Domestic
make
flights.
clear international flights won't open till the 31st of December.
International is a separate issue because it also involves the other country on that side. But domestically,
60%
but
at
domestically,
best. 60%
yeah,
at best.
but listen, it's huge. I was in, I mean.
So you're saying to me that for the first 6 years, your main criticism of the Modi government was the handling of the economy, but now, after COVID, you think they're handling the economy better?
I think so. I know people will not, because we don't, COVID is so bad, but I am an optimist, and I think with 3 good vaccines already passing phase 3 trials as we speak, and maybe 3 more in a couple of weeks, we will have a lot of the country and the world vaccinated in 6 to 8 months, and I think India will have a very nice bounce back.
All right, Mr. Bhagat, thank you very much for
Thank
this
you.
interview.
Thank you.
And in particular, for spending so much time speaking about your thoughts and clarifying what you've written in your columns. Take care, stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed.